Hello, everybody. Welcome to CRE Week. This is the New York City chapter of Cornet, and we have a really great group of people this morning. Actually, it's Saturday morning when we're recording this, so we really feel that this topic is very important, and it's really about, how has COVID disrupted mentorship for the mid-career CRE professional. So we have a few end users and a service provider on today. The bios will be, attached with this, but each of them will give a quick overview as we have the conversation. So this is really meant to be a fireside chat, and we're going to just, have people jump in to talk about this topic. But maybe we can start with, what's your personal story or your personal mentorship or career development story, just either within COVID or maybe that was important to you as you got into your careers. So I'll throw it to Gabby to start.
Oh, okay. Hi. Morning. When I started my career, it's not something you actually look for. At least I wasn't when I started. And my boss just naturally became my mentor, and that doesn't always happen. But I really leaned on her when I switched departments after I worked with her for my first year. And I realized how valuable that was. And she's still my mentor. And so now it's something that I always find myself making sure that people on my team and people that I know seek that out, because I think it's paramount for your career, not just advancement within it, but just to help you understand and even just to have a sounding board.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I would say my first mentor was probably when I was 15, and I still have that mentor today. And it's someone who I think actually knows me better than I know myself and is able to really triangulate and bounce ideas off of, like you said, a sounding board. And I think it was helpful for me from what am I going to school for and how's that like provide opportunity, to as I get stuck in my own head about whether it's opportunity or risk or challenges, someone who's able to really not be in the day-to-day of what you work through and help you step back and see those things. So definitely think it's important. And obviously with COVID, I think that need has been accelerated. And so it's something that I often look back to almost weekly now, just to really have a pulse check and keep that relationship live.
My mentor and I are no longer in the same industry. And I think that that's healthy and okay too. You don't have to seek out somebody who is in your same vertical. And I think
yeah, that's so true. It's actually the same thing for me. My mentor often asks, like, how are you so busy? So much so that you have to get up on a Saturday morning and put a button down on for a Cornet interview because there's no time during the week. But that person's obviously outside of the industry. And I think they often ask me, how are you so busy when you do real estate and no one's in the office? So that's a puzzling question for sure. But I think it's helpful because it puts things into perspectives, and it like forces you to actually frame up your conversation more at a layman's term level, and like allows you, I think, as you're reflecting with that person, to get out of the weeds of the details that you're stuck in industry wise and actually think more holistically and bigger picture, which is, I think, a healthy conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely. To see outside of yourself and look back in is always good.
And I would agree. My first mentor was my first property manager. And it was I always say kind of like a serendipitous experience. Totally was not in this industry. I was looking to be an accountant, and, took on a property administrator role working for a property manager. And it just really fused well. We worked together for probably almost 10 years before he retired. And even after his retirement, I would reach out to him when I decided I was finally ready to move up into managerial roles and talk to him. And I think what is really great about Cornet, I now am a mentee again in my mid-level career, and being able to also get this opportunity to be on this forum and talk about my experience as a mentee and having now to navigate during the pandemic, touching base with my mentor, putting together before our first meeting, my list of 5 goals that I had for the year, that I wanted to focus on, and then really making sure that me as a mentee not garble up his time and really try to make use of it. And it's been different, but definitely I'd say still also really rewarding, because I think he's a great guy. I actually was introduced to him during just like our coffee breaks during the pandemic, and he offered so much insight to the whole entire Cornet group. And I was super excited when I got my pick for mentor, and I was like, oh my God, this is so great, because I actually thought this was a great person. And it's also the chemistry. And so I think we have great chemistry. And so finding now in the pandemic, how do you get your rhythm? How do you find that chemistry and foster those relationships? It's a two-pronged process for the mentee and for the mentor.
Kanisha, Ben, it's interesting that, to be paired up with a mentor, because, I, selected my mentor, or we weren't put together, we weren't matched up. So it's interesting to know that that can work just the same as if you pick that person yourself.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to go off what Gabby said too. Like, your mentor maybe is not always someone that you work with or your boss, but my first mentor was actually my first boss as an intern after my freshman year of college. She took an opportunity on me because she saw something in me during the interview, and I don't think I would have taken a chance on me at that point, because I was nowhere near as mature after 1 year of college. But she did see something in me, and she took me on, and we're in different industries now, but we've grown, and I've learned so much from her. And honestly, I couldn't thank her enough for what she's kind of the steps and the path that she's provided me on this journey. So it's not something that you really kind of just pick out of a hat and say, I want you to be my mentor. It's got to actually work for both people, both the mentor and the mentee, and you got to both get something out of it. But the value that you do get out of it, like if you actually put something into it, is honestly priceless.
So that's a good point, Jack. And question. So for those who obviously are potentially even starting work within the pandemic and or getting into the industry, thinking through even young leaders who graduated college and started in this industry, I think we all have seen that our mentors came to us naturally in one way or another, and you can't just pick it out of the hat. So any advice for those who are looking for that mentorship or that opportunity? Because I'm thinking through how blessed I am to just have what I had at that time.
Yeah, and even particularly in this environment, if there is a move towards more of a hybrid work model, I know for myself, I wouldn't be in the position I am today if I didn't have the opportunities that were the informal, just picking up things along the way as they happen in the office. So, just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I started a new job during COVID, and it's surreal to say the least, because you find, I always say you only know who you know, and that tends to be the people in your department, and just like 1 degree of separation, depending on what you do. But as someone who has a team of 7 people, I've found that some of them I've never met, right? And it seems so crazy, been there for 7 months. But I've already expressed to them how important it is to sort of have that mentor. What I'm missing is, I'm a true believer in having an advocate as well. So that's the dynamic that I'm missing during COVID and not being able to see people face to face. I think you can mentor someone virtually. I think that's fine. Maybe there's actually a level more comfort there. Some can be a little bit more intimidated in person, opening up. So, but the advocate is something that having that person is kind of, to me, always been very important. And Nikisha, you're in my SIG, so we had that meeting, mentor versus advocate, and it's something that a lot of people don't even think about.
Yeah, and I've experienced both. I've had dual lead mentors and an advocate. And so even now in this virtual world, what I tell my team of 7, and I don't get to see them that often, is that, okay, I can't be on site, I can't see you on certain occasions, but I remember that I'm also your advocate. So if you're stuck in thinking about a project or anything that you're doing, reach out to me. I'm only but a phone call away. And I make it a point to, even when I'm in meetings, if my team sends me a text or sends me a Teams message, to try to respond to them really quickly and just say, hey, I'm in a meeting, but I'll get back to you, and make it my business to ensure that a day doesn't go by before I reach out to my team and give them some insight. I also have, my old team. So in the pandemic, I moved up 2 steps essentially within my organization and launching a new platform and taking on additional roles. And so being able to also have an advocate who I worked closely with to know that I had the potential to take on additional roles, and then also having a mentor to say to me, you know what, you've raised your hand, you've shown all this hard work, take a chance and, believe in yourself that you can do this work. And so duly, through this pandemic, I had both provide me with great support, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
I think we're losing that in this pandemic a little bit. I think you're right, Gabby. Having the mentor, you can do it naturally. You could do it online. You could even still go grab a cup of coffee outside if you really want to and still socially distance. You can have that still connection with the mentor mentee, but having the advocate in your day-to-day life that's really helping you advance your career to the next level. If that person's maybe not with your day-to-day life, day-to-day role in the business, and there's some other department, they're not going to be seeing you on a day-to-day basis to really help you advocate and advance. They're not seeing you in the hallway, that kind of natural progression saying, hey, let's think about this, or hey, how can we help you guys here, or so on and so forth. So as a junior person, I really think you're missing out on that potential to advance your career during this part, because you're just missing that day-to-day with that individual. So I think the quicker we can get back, and the quicker we can get back to somewhat of a normal routine, I think it will help these younger people really advance their careers quicker.
I totally agree. I mean, that's something that, you can set up a weekly schedule with your mentor or mentee, right? It's 3:00 on Tuesdays, but that doesn't happen with advocacy. That you're right. It is just like we pass each other in the hallway, we see each other on the stairs, in the kitchen, and we just start having that like water cooler talk, and then that's how it leads to it. Yeah, and it's so true. And an advocate doesn't have to be someone above you. Mentors tend to be, or somewhat of a same level. An advocate can just be someone who can help change within your organization.
And I'd say what I've done advocating for my team is, when I know that someone's done something really amazing that they've been working on, I try to make sure that I highlight that. So we actually kind of created like an FM weekly highlight, the things that the teams are doing, on site, the projects that they're completing, and that gets shared with our entire leadership group. We have an extended leadership group that includes the mid-level managers like myself with our platform leaders. And so that way, when I'm in that room, in that space, I can advocate for my team and say, you know what, I have a team member who's like super great. They've picked up additional tasks doing, subtenant, decommissioning, and maybe they'd be a great person for a junior project management role. And so that's how I feel like in this pandemic, if you are a manager in any shape or form, touching base with your team and kind of seeing their strengths is how you can advocate for them when you're in the rooms to make decisions about how do we expand our teams. We're also looking how to take our teams and flip and pivot between this pandemic of things that we did normally before and things that we need to change, and how do we be innovative. So taking our team members and saying they're great at this task and advocate for them so that they can evolve in their growth and opportunities is also a thing that we can do as well as mid-level managers.
Yeah, I do believe in just paying it forward for sure.
Yeah, I think, even just looking at our own company, I've seen a lot more, maybe there's some positive that's come out of COVID. There are more formalized programs. I really love those examples that you were giving, Nikisha. And, I think maybe that's actually helped to formalize some of the nature of how you really build those connections and promote people within or even externally. So talk to me a little bit about, diversity. How do we develop more diverse talent pools going forward in the commercial real estate industry? Again, with the impact of sort of a hybrid work model, will that be easier? Are there good ways? Are there any, lessons learned, best practices that you guys can share, or even just thoughts?
I think something that's interesting is, I'm responsible for real estate. I know, Jeremy, you are as well. And so, man, there's something to be said that now we have a very open area as to where to recruit talent from. Doesn't have to be, in New York, that's where we're located. I don't have to just find talent here. We can have somebody in Nebraska. And so that's really interesting to be able to get people from everywhere.
Yeah, no, plus one to that. And I also think the exciting thing about COVID is it's actually accelerating a lot of opportunity and impact that real estate can have at the table relative to everything from location to roles. And I think there's a ton of companies that were working towards this more hybrid model. And I think COVID was a great accelerator. So that plus the fact that I think new roles will be developing in our industry. It's not going to be as much of a, there's always going to be the transaction and the very, just say like analytical roles, but I do think customer service, and experience, whether it's at home or in the office, and blending that hybrid experience is going to become more and more of a need. So I'm hoping that like not only is the barrier of location being broken down, but also just greater and greater opportunity that we could then tap into from a talent perspective and really make our workforce both more diverse, but also maturing in terms of opportunity and how we have impact as an organization.
And I would add, one of my prime reasons, I've been with Heinz for 3 years now, and one of the prime reasons of me deciding to leave a corporation that I worked for 17 and a half years was that Heinz was really moving forward the needle of having the conversation on diversity and inclusion. And in every shape or form since joining, we have our One Heinz group where we get together across different verticals. We have events that are really focused on having the discussions. Our mentorship program is launching, and that's also a way how they're tapping into how do we get diversity in pools. Our recommendation process when jobs are posted, it's internally to Heinz, if you know someone, giving those recommendations. So I really think that as a corporation, if the corporation is willing to have those conversations and move the needle, then internally as employees, a part of the culture, it'll become innately just a part of your daily task to say, think outside the box. I've met someone, maybe could have been at an event, a Cornet NYC colleague that I met, and give them a recommendation to join my organization. So I definitely think, once we have it internally within our organizations, it will become, I think, second nature, like breathing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And even an exciting opportunity that, Sheena really helped to get off the ground as chair for Cornet New York City is a DEI task force. And me sitting on the executive committee, it's been exciting to see both the way we're looking at it is it touches obviously everything we do. And so in standing that up, I think it's really going to be a great opportunity for us not to just look at content and making that more accessible, but as we think through everything from those that are in college, trying to get opportunities within the industry and within Cornet, through everything from membership and marketing, right? So it's something that I think even we're seeing as an industry, we're putting more focus to, and we're actually making sure it's something that's threaded throughout. And it's been exciting to see Sheena, and Sheena, you could elaborate if you'd like, but that task force is, I think, a great opportunity, to really break down barriers and provide more and more opportunity and exposure to things that, not everyone knows exist. And I think it's gonna be a great resource for all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great to hear a lot of the conversations that are coming out of that group. And I know Cornet in general has been really all in on a mentorship, on the importance of mentorship. We do run a formal mentorship program. I went through it actually myself, and I know Nikisha, you're in it. I don't know if you wanted to speak about it, but it's great to see, and it really, the conversations just get more interesting when you have people from different backgrounds and different places, and it's great to see that happening.
It's why we love New York, right? It's a melting pot. You have so many different backgrounds and cultures that you get to experience and meet, that this is why we love being here. And I want to kind of touch on what Jeremy said. I think it really does start from the ground up. The colleges and the universities, and potentially even before that too. I could touch, because I lead the University Relations Committee right now, and it is an important factor for us to go to these schools who may not have maybe the resources or kind of the reaches of like maybe an Ivy League school, maybe they're a city school or something, but they're now getting these students who are interested in the real estate community, who may never had an opportunity to get in or may never thought of it as a career path, now really thinking about it as a career path. So I really think it starts from the early stages, kind of coming all the way up, because it really instills how important it is. And I think we're seeing it with these students now, how important this topic is to them and how much they want change. So I think we're going to see more change as the year goes on.
Yeah, I would agree, Jeremy. I mean, I'm a mom of a 17-year-old 11th grader looking to go to college, and that's definitely one of like her top number one questions that she's been doing her virtual tours for colleges is, what is your diversity inclusion? How does it feel to be on campus, and what does it look like to be on campus? And so that's super important for us in our search for college. But even further, going to high school, she's currently in high school, and it's a big topic for her campus. She's in boarding school, and the pandemic has been a different change, but they've made it clear that we want to have those discussions. We want to talk about diversity and inclusion. And I think, for a teenager at 17, I see so much more well-informed young men and women who want to make a change in the world. And I think that's awesome, because at 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. And I think our younger generation sees that there's potential to build on what we've started. And I think that'll be the success in our legacy, right? So that's also part of mentorship. What's your legacy that you want to leave? And I'm fortunate in talking about the mentorship program for Cornet. When I met with Larry, he and I had our first conversations, and he said to me, like, no one cares about, what your GPA is when you graduated college, but they want to care and know about what you're passionate about. What are the things that matter to you in the world? So it doesn't matter what field you're in. I think it takes us all back to, we're human beings. We all want to connect, and we want to pay forward something into this world. So how do we do that? And so that's a part of mentorship. And I'm thankful for it. And I think, I'm not ready to be a mentor. I definitely think I have more time as a mentee to learn and grow. But when I do feel I'm ready to be a mentor, I think it's definitely one of the topics that I want to cover, that as a human being, how do we pay it forward? And what legacy do we leave?
Well, Jack just said it. He said his first mentor was when he was in college, and look what he's doing. He's doing exactly the same thing that happened to him, right? So, I think innately, if we can go back and change things, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's ever thought like, oh my God, what would I tell myself at 22? From what I've learned. And so a way to do that, if we can't do it for ourselves, is to do it for other people. And I'm the kind of person that anyone's ever reached out to me on LinkedIn, whether I know you or not, right? I've connected through somebody and was like, or changing careers, or is, in between jobs, and has asked like, hey, can you chat with me? I always say yes, because I just believe in that good karma. So it doesn't have to be so structured, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like, this is my mentor. It could be a 20-minute conversation with somebody, and it can make all the difference in the world, and they'll never forget it.
That's
I
how
totally agree.
I think, we were introduced, as like cross-pollination, and we had a coffee break, and it was a hit. And, what is it, 2 years later, I'm a part of your SIG, I decided to join Cornet. And so those things are really changing in someone's career, because in those moments when we met, and even with the person who connected us with Laura, it really made me start to realize, like, it's also, like you said, who and being able to get exposed and know more people and experience more people in different lights allow you to see, what do you want to evolve into? And I think that's also not mentorship, but also part of that advocacy portion of it.
I couldn't agree more. I think I was given so much help and advice when I was like young in college, kind of coming into my career, that I look back and I'm amazed by it. And some of the people that I talked to that maybe weren't even official mentors to me, but maybe just kind of gave me some advice along the way. You're right, Gabby, those are conversations I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And just thinking about that now, I was given so much that you just want to turn around and give it back to the next generation, because that's just how it turns. I may not think very highly of this conversation I'm having, but that person, that individual may think it's like a world of it. They may think this is the greatest conversation. This is really going to help me kind of get to that next step in my career. And that's really what matters. That little piece of advice or that tidbit that you may have left that's going to stick with that person forever.
Sure. Yeah. It's also one of the reasons why I joined Cornet, because I had my mentor who was no longer in my industry. I had my advocate within my organization, but I also needed like peers in a different type of way. I just needed, people to talk to that, it's not just like, oh, sharing best practices and things like that, but just like, I don't know, people to relate to. And then when I found Cornet, I was like, oh, so it became like a mentorship in itself. I know that sounds a little weird, but and all the people that I've met have just, inadvertently sort of been mentors to me. And if I've been a mentor to other people, it just is a very 360 sort of relationship.
definitely able to come full circle in your relationships, I think are key. Definitely with joining Cornet, and all the events when we weren't in a pandemic, we'd have those cocktails and would have those panels and get together, and you'd be able to see people and feel them out, while now you're all on a video Zoom. And so, at the end of the Zoom call, you might get a request on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, I remember that person. And then you connect. And so there's still ways to do it in a pandemic. But definitely, I think to your point, Gabby, it is key in just meeting people. And when you have those interactions, one thing my grandmother always taught me is that when you interact with someone, try to leave that conversation with them feeling like you actually gave them your full attention. You gave them a bit of yourself, and they walk away feeling great. And so now that I've kind of come full circle, I'm in this role of, being a senior leader in my organization and growing in that organization. I try to make it a point to when I'm talking to people that it means something to them. And so having the care, having the empathy when you're talking to people to understand that they're absorbing information a little bit differently, I think also helps with that mentorship. And I think we're mentoring each other every day, right? It doesn't matter in what shape or form. I think we're all a part of this process.
It's so true. More so than people want your advice, they just want you to know, they want to know you're listening and that they're heard. And it's so true. I mean, like during this COVID period, you think like, oh, well, with Cornet, we haven't had an opportunity to be face to face and do these sorts of events. But if I didn't have my peers within Cornet to lean on and be like, for someone who is in charge of workplace, we're like, what do we do? And so we ended up having a weekly sort of think tank and just sort of like threw out ideas, and like, I don't know what I would have done without that support. So, it was just paramount to me to have people to lean on, since we couldn't go anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And it gave, we all gave each other really good ideas.
I agree. I mean, the amount of information and just support and or resources, references during this time period coming out of this group of people that, are within Cornet has been really important for, myself and even just us internally to be able to develop programming going forward and keeping on top of, what's happening.
Yeah, I think one of the fun things about the pandemic we had, do you guys remember the Cornet hackathon? Where we got together in groups during the pandemic and we tackled different questions and different ideas on what do we do in this new world that we're pivoting in. And I was a part of a group and we talked about workplace and, how do we use technology in a workplace? And it was so key for me because I was actually still on site. My team was on site at that time. And so while some people were at home, I was actually still in the field rotating on, okay, where can I get me some, hand sanitizer? What are the things that we're pivoting on cleaning? And so having Cornet to support me during that time was like a great toolbox that literally I could click on the Cornet website and be able to have tons of information or jump on a coffee break call and talk to people who are going through the same thing and thinking about the same questions. And I think that was so key during the pandemic that even though we weren't together, we were totally together in that moment.
Agreed.
And I know it's a whole different topic we don't need to talk about now, but it's the mental health thing too. It really, people are in a funk in this whole thing. And just to have that opportunity to turn to people that are in your world, in your kind of same lane that you can kind of lean on. And it may not even be work related. It may just need that you need a laugh or you need a conversation or you just needed someone to talk to, just a friendly face to see. I think during this pandemic, Cornet's brought like a lot of different positives to this whole thing. And it's kind of kept us together in a moment that we need to stay together.
Well, personally, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was really awesome. I thank you all for joining on a Saturday. We can all go back to our sweatpants now. But thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you guys.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great
That was awesome.
conversation, guys. Have a great week.